But let's, of course, start with this big story from the United States of America, where the American President Donald Trump's tariff war against the countries across the world is creating ripple effects for weeks now. And the impact is beginning to show. In some instances, Donald Trump seems to be taking his statements back almost as quickly as he makes it. So as of today, the 25% tariff on all steel and aluminium imports across countries have come into effect. The world leaders are responding with retaliatory measures. The European Union Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen has announced countermeasures on textiles, home appliances and agricultural commodities, amongst other things. Now, this is in addition to the steel and aluminium products. Other leaders have also made some pretty strong statements on Donald Trump's trade war.
Our countermeasures will be introduced in 2 steps, starting with April 1st and fully in place as of April 13th. In the meantime, we will always remain open to negotiations. We firmly believe that in a world fraught with geo-economic and political uncertainties, it is not in our common interest to burden our economies with such tariffs.
On the question of tariffs, obviously, like everybody else, I'm disappointed to see global tariffs in relation to steel and aluminium. But we will take a pragmatic approach. We are, as he knows, negotiating an economic deal which covers and will include tariffs if we succeed, but we will keep all options on the table.
Our government will continue to put forward a very strong case for an exemption, noting that the last time this occurred it took months for that exemption to be granted. We will advocate for Australian trade with the United States at every level and through every channel.
So as nations and the United States brace themselves for the impact, a short-lived escalation with Canada has been rolled back. Now, Donald Trump backed down on a pledge to double the tariffs on steel and aluminium from Canada to 50% shortly after announcing the higher rates. And the development took place just hours before the 25% tariff implementation deadline. Now, Donald Trump took back his remarks on the doubled rates after Ontario's Premier suspended a new surcharge to the United States on Canadian electricity. Now, Doug Ford, remember, has threatened not just to place a 25% surcharge on the electricity supplies, but has threatened to cut off the supplies altogether. And it is then that Donald Trump walked back on his tariffs against Canadian goods. Now, Ontario supplies power to more than 1 million American homes. The trade war has drastically impacted the market sentiment around the world. The thought of higher tariffs has also got citizens of several nations, including the United States, very worried about bearing the brunt of higher tariff rates by higher cost for goods and services. All right, now to give us more perspective on this, we are joined in this broadcast by Ms. Elizabeth Loris, who's a non-resident senior fellow at the Atlantic Council's Indo-Pacific Security Initiative, and she's joining us live in this broadcast. Now, Ms. Loris, this is an interesting dynamic that is playing out. Donald Trump calls himself the deal maker, the peacemaker, but he's setting off a trade war across the world. Now, give us a sense of how this is likely to impact relations of the United States of America with other nations that are some of its closest allies, such as Canada, for instance, nations such as within the European Union and Australia. Is Donald Trump, rubbing his closest allies the wrong way up?
Well, he's certainly causing them to have whiplash. If you look at some of the tariffs that he has imposed, they're not just, imposed, 2 weeks in advance, a month in advance, or whatever. You're looking at intraday tariffs. March 11th, he imposed some tariffs at 9:30. He lifted them at 4:30. So it depends on, the time of day, if the tariffs are a go or not. And so, some people are getting whiplash. I'm actually getting motion sickness. Got my pills here because I don't know which way, things are going. And so I think the operative term, as van der Leyen indicated, is uncertainty. And that's very difficult to have good relations with your allies when you're imposing so much uncertainty, not just day by day, but hour by hour. Trump's strategy, of course, is to level the playing field. Well, initially his strategy, honestly, was to force countries to cut down on the amount of fentanyl that is crossing the borders, and then the illegal immigration. So illegal immigration has that's slowed now, somewhat to a trickle relative to before, but the fentanyl is still a problem. But then also, beyond that, he kind of shifted and in some kind of like mission creep, and now, is talking much more about a level playing field and, trying to make things better for the American consumer as well as manufacturer. But these tariffs they're going to hurt U.S. manufacturers and the consumers and retirees who are looking at their financial portfolios.
Indeed. You mentioned that he's trying to do this to have a level playing field. In fact, he's gone on a record to state that every nation is trying to rip off the American people and the exchequer there. But the way things have played out for people within America, the markets are in a bit of a meltdown. $4 trillion is what has been lost ever since this trade war has been initiated. A lot of economic experts are saying that these tariffs are going to be counterproductive. They will drive up inflation for the American public, and they'll also kill a lot of productivity, for a lot of industries within the United States of America. How does Donald Trump and the Republicans explain this?
Well, Donald Trump very, very clearly said the other day that, quote unquote, there will be a little disturbances, but we're okay with that. So he and his administration are okay with these so-called disturbances. Right now, the American public, I think, is giving him, well, certainly his supporters, are giving him the benefit of the doubt that there is some strategy here that in the long run is going to help. In the short run, though, however, people are looking at prices that have not come down in the past year or so. When he ran for election, he says, we're going to bring inflation down, we're going to bring prices down. And that is where the American people are going to hold his feet to the fire. They're looking at their pocketbook. They're looking at the price of eggs. And if that doesn't come down, he's going to hurt. He will lose support, and the people who support him will suffer in the 2026 midterm elections.
Will be interesting to see as to how it plays out. Thank you very much indeed, Ms. Lawrence, for joining us with that perspective there.
You're welcome.
For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.